Okay, Kent, if you're ready, we can go ahead and get started. This track session will be 20 minutes for his presentation, Kent's presentation, and 5 minutes for question and answer. The speaker can remain on for 10 minutes after that stop time at 2 o'clock to answer any questions that you may have, and then the call will be ended. So you have a little more, you have about 40 minutes. To be exact. And so Kent, I'm going to go ahead and let you take over and introduce what you're going to talk about. And you are a member of the Mars Society and also the steering committee. So I'll go ahead and let you take over.
Hi, thank you, Carrie. Yes, I've been with the Mars Society for 16 years at least, and I'm the steering committee chair, and I've been to MDRS for about a month as commander of an expedition, and that's me. But my day job, I'm a business analyst. So paraterraforming Hebes Chasma. Yes, that sentence is in English. Let's break it down a little bit. Paraterraforming is not terraforming the entire planet or converting it to a new Earth, but converting just a small chunk of it. More than a dome, but less than a planet. So basically, in this case, a canyon. Less demanding of resources, a lot faster, of course, and then you get when you break things down like that, you can actually have different biomes and different craters or whatever. It's also called Mars House, if you've heard that term. That's a similar concept. So one of the difficulties with terraforming is recently some people have claimed that you would have to grind up the entire surface of Mars down to about 20 meters to free up enough gases to make an atmosphere that was breathable. Okay, let's grant that just for the sake of argument, whether you believe it or not, and it's up to future generations to figure that out. What about 0.023% of the surface? Yes?
Hey Kent, this is Carrie. I apologize. Are you trying to show a presentation as well, or are you just reading your presentation?
Slide, okay, I'm sorry. No, it's, I hit share screen. Is it not showing? Okay,
it is not.
Okay, let's try that. Okay, I guess I'll back up. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was like, okay. Perfect. I see you and
better.
I see your screen.
Much better.
Sorry about that. Take two.
I had that. I'm glad you called that out. That would have been a really awkward thing with all those wonderful graphics, I'm sure.
Right. I guess start over.
So I had it set up earlier. That's weird. Okay. I'll punt.
Okay.
So this is paraterraforming. This is the idea. Okay, now you can see what I'm talking about. That'll be just great on YouTube, won't it? Anyway, so Hebes Chasma is a small box canyon just north of Chasma, which is north of Valles Marineris. So basically, this little guy here is still about the size and shape of Lake Eerie. So about 32,000 square kilometers, about 6 kilometers deep. It's actually deeper in some places than Valles Marineris, but it only covers 0.023% of the surface. So even if you had to pull resources from other parts of the planet, you could still make that work as a terraforming center. Why this place? Well, one, it's right on the equator, which makes it logistically easy and relatively easy in terms of sunlight. And also it's this wonderful box canyon, which means you can basically cover the top and the ends are already more or less sealed. So you have a simple platform for construction in that sense of a enclosed space. The problem with that is that it is not gentle terrain. As we said, we'd have to grind up the surface a bit to get to liberate enough material to make a terraforming situation. Well, this is already pretty ground up. This is a lot of sedimentary deposits and so forth, but it's not easy terrain. So we would have to initially basically drill it down to the bedrock, do open mining of the overburden. We would take a lot of that material, pull anything we need for industrial processes like metals and clays and so forth. The remaining tailings we could then use for agriculture in domes. We would enrich that biologically with beneficial bacteria, plant matter, things like that, and enrich it with nitrogen. And then we would adapt that soil to different conditions, different locations. So if you need a desert biome or a jungle biome or whatever, you would adapt the soils to match that with the proper bacterial content and nutrition and so forth, and minerals and so forth. There's a concept called phytomining, which is literally mining with trees. Basically, there are trees that concentrate metals like nickel and so forth in their leaves. So instead of having an open pit mine, you can actually get the last of the metals out of the soil by planting these trees and harvesting the leaves off of the trees. We would probably do that as sort of a twofer. We would be able to mine the last of the minerals out of the soil while at the same time biologically enriching it with the plant matter from those trees. Then we could put that to agricultural use, of course, to feed the residents of that area. And then finally, we would adapt it to the different biomes. What I'm proposing is basically a double layered system. This would be the initial basement layer, for lack of a better word. And this is still relatively large. We'll get into that in a moment. But we could put most of our initially we would do the mining and settlement and so forth down here. Then once we had enough material, we would build these additional domes on top, which would go all the way up to the top of the canyon. And there's enough air pressure in this that it would actually support a very thick roof just from air pressure alone. These basically are an afterthought. These columns would allow you to take fiber optics from above and channel the light into these stringers here. So the basement layer, these domes are about 500 meters across, at least notionally. I mean, the actual size would vary depending on the engineering involved. And initially, this would be all there was. We could support these with air pressure and so forth. And we would put our initial infrastructure down here, reactors, lights, so forth. And then as we made enough soil to build the structure, we would build structure, run fiber optics through, channel the natural light into these arcs here. We could actually put spark gaps across here to make an artificial lightning to fix nitrogen. We could use nuclear power generation down here and lighting systems to final light up to those fiber optics. We would not have light coming from one location, because if you put like a grow light in a room, all the leaves point to that one point, and it's not much of a forest that way. So you would actually move the light across, similar to the way the sun moves, so to give the biome a more natural feel, so that the plants track the sunlight. And during the dust storms and so forth, your system does not die, because you can actually crank in artificial light from below. You could actually make a 24-hour day as appropriate, or change the seasons to be closer to what Earth is within this microbiome. This view from below, of course, we would put all infrastructure down here. This, like I said, initially, air pressure would support that. But once we add this layer, we would need something else to support this. So we could either double the air pressure, we could put water down here, make it part of the water reclamation system. We could simply have a stronger system or whatever, beef up the columns. It doesn't really matter. It would probably be situational. Some areas would be one way and some another. And this roof is high enough, you could actually have clouds forming underneath it and blowing through. So on a cloudy day, you wouldn't even see the roof, but on a clear day, you would be able to see this wonderful architecture up here, this sort of Roger Dean painting that you'd be walking around in. This was inspired in part by La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. And architect Antoni Gaudi actually did this before computers. He designed this over 100 years ago. The way he was able to get these parabolic structures exactly right is he took a bunch of string and hung it upside down with little sand-filled weights. And he spent months adjusting all the weights to get the exact parabola he would need for each arc. So essentially, at that point, you were able to, he was able to get the shapes exactly the way you would with a computer, trace those shapes onto paper, and then transfer that to the blueprints. So as a tribute to that, we have this wonderful design here. And this is a big enough space. Like I said, it's the size of Lake Erie. So you could have freshwater lakes up here, have rivers running down, and then a saltwater sea, coastal areas and so forth. You could have a mountainous area around this area. And then you also have this nice canyon over here where you can prototype all the systems to see if they work out. Then you have this plateau in the middle. We could leave part of that exposed and use it as a spaceport. Like I said, it's close to the equator. So if you hung a tether off of Phobos, you could then basically use that tether to, use the tether to transport stuff to and from Phobos off the edge of the atmosphere. So, or without it, you could still have a conventional spaceport up here. And if a ship crashes, it's not going to crash through the top of your roof. It's going to hit this rock out here. Now, if we graph things out as far as life goes, if we have one gravity and one Earth protection in terms of deep space radiation and so forth, and we plot both of those as 1 on this graph, and we have deep space as 0 on this graph, then Mars is basically here. So not all species are going to adapt to that. So, different species are going to have different reactions. So they may have, one species may handle it just fine, another species may be more of a hothouse flower where it requires better conditions than that. So in this case, we may have the Hebes Chasma surface habitat would basically be here. We could, it's at Mars gravity regardless. And then we would also have what are called centrifuge habitats. And that would allow you to spin up the thing to any gravity level between Mars and Earth. And this is what that would look like. This is from a presentation I did last year called Eureka. And these rings would actually fit in those domes on the bottom layer of the habitat. So you would be able to extend your possible ecosystems as well as having 2 layers. So it's more than the 32,000 square kilometers. It's that plus whatever you put in the basement. You could put these essentially in the basement and have even more because it's at an angle. So getting into the biology of the thing, we need the equivalent to a Drake equation for terraforming. So in the Drake equation, it's a very, this is a simple graphic version. You observe the stars. Which stars have planets? Are those planets habitable? Did those habitable planets develop life? If it's living, is it intelligent? If it's intelligent, it's detectable. And the answers to these questions, yes or no, determine which category of science we go in, whether it's exploration or settlement or exobiology or SETI. If we take that same thing and we apply it to biology, we have a similar thing here where we're building it artificially. So we would construct our habitats, we would pick the species for a particular habitat, we would have essentially a draft biome. Some species are going to adapt to the surface gravity, some are not. If it's not adapting, we can use different therapies, and we'll get into strategies on that in a moment. Can they be adapted? They would go back into that biome. If not, then we can move them to the centrifuge. Now, if it's migrating waterfowl or something where they require, thousands of miles of migration and navigation by the stars, they might not like the centrifuge either. So some species are not going to adapt no matter what you do. So we would have alternative species that we would find from Earth to fit in that niche. So you have a set of centrifugal habitats below and a set of surface habitats above, and you would extend each depending on how many species would demand that for further expansion of the ecosystems. And then you continue and just keep building this as far as until you run out of canyon, and then there's another canyon about 2,000 miles east that's similar that you could box in. So we tend to think of terraforming as something that is done in the distant future. However, the science of it can be done or started here and now, because we have to start with species. So we, for each species, what is the territory? What kind of enclosure would you need to get it to Mars? What kind of ecosystem does it require? What temperature range? What species is it interdependent with? Which, is it accepted or excluded? In other words, we don't want, 2 predator species knocking each other out after you've gone all the trouble of moving to Mars and so forth. What are their waste parameters? So we build an artificial biome based on the species that we select off of this Earth database. And I don't think, even though biology has been a long-term science, I don't think anybody's really categorized this as a data dictionary or whatever for terraforming purposes. So if you're a biologist who's really into Mars, you can get started here now on making the future happen. We would then design habitats around that. Once those habitats exist, we can assess the stress impacts of things, and we can also assess the behavioral impacts. Hunting and evading predators and prey are not going to be the same as they are on Earth at 40% gravity. So, as pointed out, chickens can fly. Well, what's going to happen to other species as well? What strategies are they going to invent? A lot of interesting things are going to happen. Just watching animals play, as cubs or kits or whatever is going to be an amusing thing to these future biologists. And then how do we observe it? At what level of granularity, from the individual to, in real time, to multi-generational? So there's a lot of data that would go into this lake that would inform the decisions. And then active countermeasures, as I said, we would need ways to adapt those species as they go. So we would have natural selection, of course, just let nature take its course. Artificial selection, similar to farming. You pick the plants and animals that adapt most easily. Genetic modification. We would tend to want to do that further down the food chain. So if you have an ibex that has a calcium deficiency, maybe you enrich the calcium in the soil and the plants pick it up. And if the plants don't pick it up, then maybe you modify the plants so that they produce more calcium. It's similar to how the space station, they've been able to overcome a lot of the effects of microgravity by a combination of diet, exercise, and pharmaceutical products. And obviously you're not going to get an animal to jump on a treadmill, for an hour a day, but you could still adapt their nutrition. You could introduce drugs into the genetically modified organisms so that they would eventually get into the animals or plants or whatever, and you would work your way up the food chain that way. You could modify the habitat, make a 24-hour day or as needed, or make adjustments there. And then you could always find a replacement species from Earth. As a result, you're going to have things where you might initially start with a field of grass with rabbits, and then you add foxes, and then if you add more domes, then you can add wolves and hawks and so forth, and you gradually expand your biome until you run out of progenitor species from Earth that you can then transplant over. But Mars is not Earth. You're going to have certain odd mixtapes, essentially, of species. So you may have kangaroos, bison, and elephants in the same ecosystem, simply because they're the ones that worked and the other ones did not. Things that we would not normally associate with terrestrial habitats, but they're the ones who are able to make the change. We would have different epigenetics, and we would eventually develop exospecies, either artificially or through natural selection, where they would be adapted to life at 40% gravity. These habitats could be extended. You could have a crater somewhere with a higher oxygen level and adapt species that way. We used to have oxygen levels about double what they are on Earth during the Permian epoch, and insects got absolutely huge. So you could have a sort of a Permian Jurassic Park in a crater somewhere on Mars that would even be larger because the other gravitational limitation is removed as well. So that could be rather interesting if you like bugs. Then biodiversity, of course, is going to be limited. But eventually, like I said, you run out of Earth species, but what's going to happen is that not every species is going to make the transition. Some are going to work in the centrifuge, some may work in a lunar cave arrangements, some may work on Mars, but you're going to have localized Cambrian explosions in each of these habitats. And the end goal is that you would have more exospecies than original species from Earth. So the biodiversity chains would essentially make not just humans a multi-planet species, but all species multi-planetary. And that's the gist of everything. So any questions?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Nebergall. So I think we have one question. It says, all of the plant mining and AA options will need water, not just for nutrients, but to mitigate perchlorates and bacterial additives. Are you thinking of using CO2 scrubbers and biogas digester or something else? Does your roof mitigate radiation concerns? And current research shows the radiation actually halts microbial processes that would assist with OM ratios.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of this is going to be worked out by the future inhabitants, but we can, these things will start small and they will start microbial. So things like microbial digesters and so forth are going to be needed for agriculture to feed the populations, and then as they develop more waste products that they can then, introduce to habitats like this, then we would be able to move on from there. So yes, those sciences will be enhanced by the environment over time.
Mm-hmm. So the next question is, what do you think would be the best method to remove the perchlorates from the soil?
Well, it's true of any toxin. Is the reason it's toxic is because it reacts to something. And once it reacts to something, it stops, with the exception of plutonium. So for obvious reasons. So basically anything, it's like if you mix an acid and a base, you end up with something neutral. So what I would use the perchlorates for early on is I would go ahead and let them react with things in your waste stream to basically kill off the bacteria and so forth. And then once it's done its job, then you would take whatever those waste products were and clear it off from there. Now there would still be chlorine, which is, you know, elemental, but you could then use that for salts or whatever. Basically anything reactive theoretically may have an industrial application. So we would try to transfer those elements off to elemental, to industrial processes and so forth. And, you know, if it can be incorporated into biology later, then great, as salts for the salt water and so forth. But if not, then, you know, there's a big planet out there, we'll find a place for it.
Okay, so we have time for one more question.
Okay.
Okay, so what terrestrial animal species would adapt favorably and why?
Well, probably the ones the easiest are fish. However, they've done experiments with fish on the space station, and they have twin bones even when they're swimming. So it's not really an easy plan, because you'd think fish would be, well, you're swimming anyway, why would anything be different in microgravity? But even they were a little bit dependent on gravity. So it really depends. I mean, it would probably start, obviously with humans, you can do what you do on the space station, exercise, whatever. Domesticated animals and so forth, you can basically bring them into an organized, for lack of a better word, culture, where you're walking the dog to get it, you know, up to the speed or whatever. But once you start making things more natural, it's going to be, you know, we can't predict these things, but we can come up with strategies to, you know, have a plan B, plan C to make that work. But we don't know. That's part of the beauty of it, is that I can't predict these things with perfect accuracy.
Great. So thanks again, Mr. Nebergall, and thank you all of you for your attention, and we hope to see you in the next talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.